Hi, my name is Jonathan Martin, and I have the great privilege of being able to work out of the Spiritual Life Center at a place called DePauw University in Greencastle, Indiana. And one of the things that I'm loving most about this new role right now is the opportunity that I have to be able to connect with students, dialogue with students about where they are on their own spiritual journey, which is a wide continuum. Part of the beauty of that season of life is that there's room to figure things out. There's room to ask the big questions. There's room to explore. And always my sense of what any spiritual leader, any community leader really should do, what any elder does, is that we're not there to dictate anyone's journey, but to give people a sense of permission to walk the road their own soul needs to take. But all that being said, I do approach my role as a university chaplain as a particular person shaped by a particular tradition, by my Christian tradition. And one of the things I'm hoping to do is maybe provide some on-ramps for people who want to explore their faith, want to deepen their faith. I know a lot of what I've been doing, a lot of the conversations I've been having for the last couple years now have been really all around, for people who have been deeply disillusioned or disenchanted with church, with institution, with forms of religion. And I love, and I'm so honored really to be part of those kind of conversations. But it's also had me in this place for a minute now of thinking about what life looks like on the other side of that. So maybe you do make some kind of a faith transition. Maybe you're not where you started. Maybe you have taken off for one place, not knowing exactly where you're going, like it is in the biblical narrative when God tells Abraham to go and he doesn't know where he's going. You're on this kind of road. Well, what now? What next? And it's really invigorating for me right now to be able to kind of think a bit more ground up. What does it look like to believe? What does it mean to pray now? What does it mean to engage in spiritual practices now? If maybe you have a history with some of these practices, and now you're at a place where you'd have to approach some of those practices differently. All right, well, what does that look like? What does that sound like? That's the conversation I'm really interested in having right now. So I wanted, in the course of these couple little videos, to just share a few thoughts on what, for me, the journey looks like, and hopefully in ways that, again, without dictating anybody's path, can maybe at least be helpful in giving some guideposts, or at least an encouraging nudge to kind of get out of the driveway and explore, to walk the road that you need to walk. For me, as a person who is a Christian, a word that comes with all kinds of history and baggage depending on where you come from, but for someone who deeply identifies with the story of Jesus, the person of Jesus, the life of Jesus, I want to maybe begin by just saying a little bit about my understanding of what it means to follow Jesus. So now what you have to understand is that Jesus himself says in the Gospels that he is the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus himself says that he is the way. Now, interestingly enough, I feel like now often Jesus is a bit of a mascot. And there's this sense, that maybe you're on the right team or the wrong team. But Jesus is not a mascot. Jesus is a way. While Jesus is a human, a prophet who lived, and for those of us who are Christians, who we believe also shared in the divine nature, one who is God, Jesus also is a way. Jesus is a way of being. Jesus is a way of being in the world that is nonviolent, that is self-giving, that is sacrificial. Jesus is a way of humility. Jesus is a way both of tenderness and fierceness. Jesus is a way of justice. Jesus is a way of truth. And for those of you who may be interested in going on some kind of a spiritual journey, and maybe trying to explore the path in some way for yourself that may be, again, different than where you've been before, and trying to figure out where to start, I would just really want to offer this. My whole understanding of who Jesus is and what Jesus is, as Christians, we believe in what we call the Trinity, this idea that God exists in a relationship. There is this mystery of a God that already exists in a divine relationship. As we say it historically in our tradition, a God who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Now, because I'm going to be talking about the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray, I'm going to go a little bit more into those particular words, into that language. I understand that for a lot of folks, the language of Father may be loaded or may be negative in some way. As I will cover more at length in that talk, we have all kinds of reasons for those of us who believe in Jesus to believe in that God is Spirit. Those who worship God worship in spirit and truth. God is not gendered in the way we think of such things. God is not male or female. The God who creates all of us in perfect love is a God who embodies all the things that are good and beautiful about humanity in all the various forms. So I have no problem with referring to God as Creator, God as Father, God as Mother. None of that, incidentally, is about gender. It's about relationship. God is a God who fathers. God is a God who mothers. God is a God who parents. But we'll talk more about that in the next video. For right now, though, this notion that God exists as a relationship within God's self, right? So since for Christians we believe that the idea is that there is this river, there is this movement, there's really old metaphors in the church where we talk about God as a dance, and the dance between Father, Son, and Spirit, between Creator, Son, and Spirit. The idea is that there's this constant flow of mutuality, there's this constant flow of self-giving, and we as humans are invited to participate in that divine relationship. We're invited to participate in that divine love. We're invited to come right in the thick of it. If you have a child or you have a small dog like Stella, who's right here, if you can see her, if you have a small pet, or if you have a child in your home, you know how much children and animals like to be in between. They love to be in that in-between space. That's very much the idea, is that we get to be in between. We can be right in the middle, right in the thick of this divine relationship. And since this is a river that started long before we got here and will be going long after we're gone, the invitation really is, come jump in the river. Come be part of this. Beliefs matter. We'll talk more about that. Beliefs are important. But beliefs, especially if we think of beliefs as intellectual ideas, as propositions, are not of ultimate significance. What is of ultimate significance is how we participate, or if we allow ourselves to participate in this flow of self-giving mutuality, in this flow of self-giving love. That's the whole idea, is that we actually participate. It's not about what we think about God, nearly so much as, are we going to jump into the river? Are we going to jump into the mystery? Are we going to allow ourselves to be caught up in a story that's bigger than we are? And incidentally, whoever you are, wherever you're watching from, whatever story you find yourself in, you are certainly very welcome in this space, as I like to say, and I'll talk about the origin of that maybe here in a minute, but all of you is welcome in this space. But the point is that the language matters. Language for how we speak about God, language, the kind of language we use to speak about our neighbors. Yeah, of course it matters. But ultimately, there is a reality that runs deeper than the language. There is a reality of God that runs deeper than the words we use to speak about God. And one of the reasons that I feel like I need to do a little series like this is I feel like there is a deep hunger. I feel like there's a deep craving for so many of us. And I see that with our students to want to participate in that divine life, to want to participate in that kind of energy, to want to participate in that movement, in that flow, in that river, to want to jump in the river. And yes, we can have all of the conversations. There's plenty of time and room to talk about the language we use to speak about God. But I hope that we can get into some practices that really allow us to participate. For me as a Christian, the entire story of Scripture ends with invitation, and that comes from the Apocalypse, the book of Revelation, where it says, the Spirit and the bride say, come. The Spirit and the bride say, come. Let anyone who is thirsty come and drink. That's the whole idea. If you're thirsty, well then come and get a drink. If you want God, then you can connect with God. There are all kinds of ways that can happen. Broadly speaking, this way of connecting with God, this way of being in the world, is what we call prayer. Prayer is connection with God, and it is more than an occasional activity. It is more than written prayers, so that will be important, even what we'll talk about, or spontaneous prayers. It's a way of being in the world, a way of being in connection with God. And one of the things I love so much about the God who, for me, is revealed in Jesus is that there's this idea that, okay, right, if there is a river, then friends, there is not a wrong place or a bad place from which to jump into the river. There's not a bad place to start. Because being connected to that flow, being connected to that movement, being caught up in that triune love that existed, again, long before you got here and will be here after we're gone, that's the whole game. There's not a bad way to say yes to God. There is no wrong way to say yes to God. I think, I know Bono from U2 has a new book coming out, and I love that he's using surrender in the title and as a motif for the book, because I think as much as that word can get cloudy if you're thinking about some kind of servile, gross kind of submission, I think it's actually, surrender is an important word, because there is this notion of yielding to something larger than yourself. Not of giving up you, not of giving up on identity, but giving yourself over to an identity that's greater than yours, greater than individual identity, especially for those of us who are in the context of America. We're not really good at thinking in terms of collective identity. But that is, in fact, the invitation, is to find ourselves in a larger story, a communal story, a story of a people on the move. This God of the Exodus who's always on the move. we get to connect with that kind of story. And where we connect, how we start, that takes all kinds of different forms. I think so much, and it's been, good grief, surely it's been over 20 years now since I read it, but Anne Lamott's great book, Traveling Mercies, she tells kind of cheekily of her conversion experience. And the idea is that she talks about being in this place in her life where there was all kinds of chaos, and how this feeling like her life was such a mess, but as she would walk home to her houseboat, that she had this sense that God was following her home like a house cat nipping at her heels. And she says finally she gets this moment where one day she just says, "F it, you can come in," when she opens the door. And she says that's the beautiful moment of her conversion. I love it because in the simplicity of that, there is such a clear idea of surrender, of giving oneself over. Sarah Miles, in her beautiful book, Take This Bread, she talks about wandering into a little Episcopal church in San Francisco and partaking of the Eucharist and having this very transcendent, mystical experience of connecting to a reality that was bigger and broader than she was, stumbling in this church and partaking of this meal. Friends, there's not a wrong way to say yes. The whole idea, the whole question is whether or not we will say yes. Are we going to stay locked up in our own kind of individual sense of reality? Or are we going to allow ourselves to be caught up into a current that is larger and broader, that gives us meaning, that gives us our lives a sense of context and perspective, that gives us resources where we can learn how to love ourselves and to love our neighbors? That, for me, really is the question. And to return to where we started, because I do understand this saying yes to be a way of following Jesus. Jesus is what can I say about Jesus right now in short? This mysterious and somehow yet very particular person of Jesus is, for me, the way through which and through whom I make sense of the world. And part of what I love about Jesus is the one who sets a table, which is why there's a lot of table imagery in our New Testament, who sets a table, who spreads a feast to which everyone is invited, and to which, again, our whole selves are invited. And over again, I feel like there is this invitation, there is this initiative that doesn't come from me to yield the more selfish ways that sometimes I'm inclined to construe my own life and my own story, and come be part of something bigger and broader. If there's anything that inside of you that says yes, then why not go with that? Why not trust that? And in just a few moments, we'll talk about prayer. Prayer. What is prayer if not a way of saying yes? What is prayer if not a response to an invitation? And I feel like I'm overcomplicating this just a little bit. I'm really trying to say something simple. Start from where you are. Start however you can. And if that involves prayer as some kind of a vertical dialogue, if that involves participating in a community where conversations about this larger story are happening, if that involves being connected to meaningful work of justice in the world, there is an invitation to say yes. And while I don't know all the ins and outs, all the particularities of your story, I can tell you that when you trust that prompting that comes from deep within, I don't think you're going to go wrong when you trust that initiative to get out of your own head and to jump into a current that's larger and that is about connection, that I do believe is about connection with God, connection with others. You're not going to go wrong. So, the disciples, at one point, they asked Jesus, Lord, teach us to pray. Teach us how to live in the world in this way. Teach us how to be connected to God, to the reality of God, the way you're connected to the reality of God. Teach us this way of being in the world. So over the course of the next couple of videos, we're going to talk about that, what it looks like to pray, what it looks like to explore this connection. Just know this, that this way of following Jesus, this way of being in the world with God, really and truly is not about ideas. And while again, theology matters, it's not ultimately about doctrine. It's about what you do with yourself, what you do with your life, what you do with your body. And first and foremost, that starts with simply saying yes. I have glimpsed a different way of being in the world than the way I've been living. I have glimpsed a different way of engaging God, engaging my neighbors. I've glimpsed something beautiful and good that somehow feels outside of myself, outside of reality as I've known it. And as you see that, as you come to see that more, as you come to trust that more, the more deeply, the more heartily, our soul learns how to say yes. And our soul learns how to surrender to this, because for me, this is the central Christian claim. We believe that God is love, not that God is loving, but that God is love. That the ground floor of reality is actually all encompassing, self-giving, self-sacrificial love. And if you believe that that's what's at the center of the universe, if you believe that's what's at the center of all things is love that dignifies and never shames, love that is not transactional, love that's not conditional, but love that is freely offered. In the same way, again, that there is this freedom of movement in the God that is Trinity, that out of the abundance, out of the overflow of that love, we are invited to jump into the river. And I'll say it one more time from Revelation. The Spirit and the bride say, come. In the Pentecostal tradition that I come from, there's a little song that we would sing, come and dine. Come and dine, the Master calleth, come and dine. That's the invitation. Come and feast. If you're hungry, if you're thirsty for an experience of life that's broader, richer, and deeper, then say yes to that.